Hi, this is Lauren Cheek from Loricopia, and I'm doing a quick video on your most recent common ancestor and how you work towards triangulating that. And the reason why I say that you triangulate is basically it's like finding anything from 2 points of reference on a map. You're taking your ancestry and you're trying to find a common place or a common person. That is your most recent common ancestor. It's actually pretty hard if you don't have the same last name or if you're not close cousins. So I'll tell you a story real quick. I had a match on Family Tree DNA, and I'm also in the database for GEDmatch, but I turn up with a lot of people from different DNA testing companies as my cousins. So I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, literally thousands of cousins that I know of that are direct cousins that are within a generation, like within my family's generation, my parents' siblings or my grandparents' siblings' descendants. And I know of most of them by now with Facebook and everything else. But anyway, this was a person that matched me. His last name is Kroll and my last name is Cheek. So we had no commonality to go on. Well, it turned out that he kept saying, because of so many people that we had in common as matches, that pointed to his lineage, he thought our lineage would be from the Gees and the Rupees, who were his descendants. Now, he's from British Columbia, Canada, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. My dad's family is Georgia. My mom's family originally lived in Iowa for several generations back. They came as pioneers, and lots of people pioneered there and ended up in Wapello County. So I was looking through his genealogy because he gave me certain names, and I looked them up, and I was like, I just don't think this is the family that we're descended from. Well, I did find one thing in common, and that was Wapello County. So one of his Gee ancestors got married in Wapello County and Iowa, and my mom's family all settled in Wapello County. So we left it kind of fallow. We've been friends on Facebook for about 2 years, and he's funny. We're both political and everything else, and it's always fun contrasting. And we knew we were cousins, but we didn't really know how. Because that part of the DNA is pretty undeniable. But anyway, long story short, what happened was he kept following his lineage, and because we found the Wapello connection, he realized that his ancestor was my mother's mother's father's mother's sister. And I did not know that my mother's mother's father's mother's last name was Gee before she got married, because his last name was Sutton, and Sutton is the name that we know. But the Sutton family, because they were pioneers, were kind of orphaned early, and I don't know what happened with the girls because I've seen them in one picture. He had I think 2 sisters, maybe more. But I've seen pictures of him as a young guy when he's about 18, looking dapper, in a photograph that my grandmother told me was his, more or less like his senior portrait. And then there's another photograph that's a professional portrait as well from a party. And there's a friend in there, and then one of his sisters who looks very much like my mother. He didn't look very much like me. It was kind of dark eyebrows and dark hair, and it's very different features than I had. But he died in a coal mining accident. He was mining coal from a hill outside the family farm. This was when my mother was about 5 years old. So my grandmother, his daughter, had already married and moved onto her own life, but still lived in the same town. And he was mining from underneath the shelf to get the gold, not the gold. The coal was like gold in those days, though. because everybody used it to, operate their coal stoves and everything and heat their houses. So he would go underneath the shelf and kind of ease it out, but the whole shelf of shale and coal collapsed on him, and he died. So he died when my mother was, like I said, about 5 years old. So we knew nothing about his family. He'd been orphaned. When my aunt that did the genealogy, she's like one of my great aunts, did the genealogy on my mom's side, it didn't include anything past him because she just didn't know. And we didn't have our modern resources. So it was delightful to find out that this other person, by having my information and his information, was able to figure out that, in fact, my ancestor's mother was his ancestor's sister. And also there were triplets in that family. So can you imagine being, freaking a pioneer with triplet girls in that day and age, and then have them survive? They all survived to adulthood, which is very rare because children died often and women died in childbirth, and people just died from various different reasons, from diseases that we now totally take for granted as being treatable. But anyway, so that's my little story there of how I found out my great grandfather's mother and father's name and family and their history from a cousin of mine from Canada.